From the mountains of northern New Mexico comes a story older than memory, where legends walk beside men, where wolves guard ancient secrets. This is The Pack Warriors. This is The Pack Warriors, Episode 4, Outwitted, by Nicholas Coakley and Michele Pollock Dalton. Narrated by Rick Barr. Published by Barr 26 Publishing, LLC. Copyright 2025, all rights reserved. Clouds scuttled across the velvety expanse above and cloaked the pale luminance of a waning quarter moon. Splitting the shadows, 7 giant predators burst into a clearing surrounded by a dense, ancient forest. The wolf pack, their primal instincts on high alert, scented their prey on the wind, and it drove them into a frenzied bloodlust. As their powerful haunches pushed them forward over the rough terrain, one silverbacked animal skidded to a halt and lifted his muzzle to the wind. Intelligent, sapphire eyes glowed brightly against the backdrop of the night, and the wolf's intense gaze narrowed as his perception sharpened. Sensing their packmates' distress, the rest of the hunting party returned to the lone wolf's position and slowly began to circle. Minds pulsating with the predatory instincts of their supernatural hosts, the Lupos warriors contained within the sleek bodies growled in frustration. "Attack!" Running Bear's mind shouted from within his canine form before he turned west and bolted through the towering pines. On his heels, the other members of the pack struggled to curb the untamed urges inherent to their animal forms, with little success. "Stop!" emanated from the dominant member of the group, his black jaws nipping at the hindquarters of his fleeing compatriot. Running Bear, in lupine form, skidded to a halt and snapped at his leader, fangs glowing in the moonlight. He'd never mastered the ability to speak clearly with the elongated canine muzzle, so the medicine man hoped the Lupos chieftain had a firm grasp on his humanity. "Listen," he begged, breaking into the apex predator's thoughts. "It is a ploy." The smallest of the vicious beasts stilled momentarily, her sterling-toned form slowly slinking forward to sniff the air around the silver-backed wolf. Her bright eyes slowly faded from a deep plum to a lighter amethyst as Bluefoot's presence of mind returned. "Calm," she urged the other wolves. "What?" Chief Screaming Eagle snapped, his sharp incisors clicking together. "There are Improbus warriors nearby," Running Bear transmitted telepathically, "and they aren't heading east toward their village." "Where, then?" the black wolf growled, his emerald eyes glinting dangerously. "West," Running Bear advised via his thoughts, "and Raging Flames is with them." A spark of animal instinct, tempered by mortal perception, flashed through the minds of all 7 Lupos warriors. The Improbus children being sacrificed on the pyres in the east were a masterful diversionary tactic, a horrible stratagem of mayhem to steal their attention from Raging Flame's true intentions. "Go!" Chief Screaming Eagle howled, directing 4 of the chosen warriors back to the battlefield. Then he turned to the sterling-toned wolf with dark gray socks. "Keep our spirit animals in check, Bluefoot. We require their strength and speed, but I need a clear mind," he directed telepathically. A 100 paces from their summer village, Running Bear imposed his thoughts on Screaming Eagle and Bluefoot. "Hide!" The command rankled Screaming Eagle, chief of the Lupos. However, even his spirit animal understood the urgency in the directive, so he dropped to his belly and carefully nosed through the underbrush. They'd approached from the southwest without conscious thought of how they'd conceal themselves upon arrival. But by the providence of the Great Spirit, the 4-footed warriors found themselves among the burial sites of the recently fallen, braves whose stones still smelled of freshly turned earth. Whining softly in distress, Bluefoot's wolf inched along on her belly, careful to leave the stones piled over each grave undisturbed. "Easy, Blue," Running Bear silently consoled. "Our fallen will soon follow the sun trail to the village of the Cloud People." The trio abruptly stilled their advance when Running Bear's hackles rose, Screaming Eagle and Bluefoot waited. The easy telepathy they shared in human form was blunted by their canine minds while in wolf state, and the other powers they typically possessed became virtually muted. The Improbus sent their best warriors yesterday, sweeping far around us, scaling the mountain as if the battlefield were beneath their notice, Running Bear wordlessly conveyed in shock. "You're certain?" Screaming Eagle lowly growled in disbelief. "Raging Flames has just arrived from the northeast, and his braves are celebrating his cunning victory." The stunned medicine man transmitted silently before attempting to speak. The guttural, indistinguishable sound of his voice dissuaded Running Bear from continuing in that vein, and he shared. "The Improbus have taken our people hostage, our elders, the women." "Pups?" Screaming Eagle urgently questioned before mentally correcting his vocabulary. "The children." A telepathic confirmation flitted through his mind, and Screaming Eagle panicked. Nearly unable to restrain the physical fury of his beast, his mind howled, "Damn them!" Ignoring his leader's outburst, the silverback admonished, "No, Blue." He blocked the female's bristling form as Bluefoot tried to leap past him. Running Bear body-checked the smaller female and clamped his teeth on her scruff. "No," he reiterated. "My daughters." "Your mother has hidden them," Running Bear soothed. Calming by a small degree, Bluefoot shook loose of her packmate's hold. Then she quickly flattened herself to the ground. Screaming Eagle and Running Bear did the same as a band of Improbus warriors crested the knoll just beyond the tree line. "Raging Flames will be pleased," one of their enemies boasted. How easy a task it was to cut down that pack of mangy dogs. He laughed with great pleasure, drawing 3 fingers through the blood that covered his chest. Then he lifted the gore-smattered cudgel in his fist, pumping the instrument of death in victory. "Quiet," another demanded as dense clouds slid across the moon, concealing the only source of light. "The runner said our braves have gathered the people near the central fire ring, but we should not assume the battle is won." The boaster scoffed and then went silent as the other warriors glared at him. "Spread out, make a search of the tents, but take nothing," the Improbus leader directed. "Our chieftain will feed your corpse to the ravens if he discovers you've taken any of the goods he's claimed as his own." Screaming Eagle's emerald gaze followed the invaders. He knew their tactics and understood the ramifications. The Improbus tribe had not attained its current strength through peaceful means. Instead, they ate up the cultures of the conquered peoples they enslaved. And if Raging Flame's warriors were converging to take possession of the Lupos village, that could only mean his own brave's blood soaked the fertile plain to the southeast. "No!" Running Bear howled internally as Bluefoot separated from the concealing shadows, her form low to the ground, as she silently stalked the duo searching the tents at the outer edge of the village. Screaming Eagle and Running Bear tried to communicate telepathically with Bluefoot, but the mother wolf's mind was fully engaged in the protection of her young, eliminating the possibility of any other thought. The pair lost sight of the she-wolf for several minutes, but the scent of a fresh kill enticed their senses, and they slunk through the fields at the edge of the village, hoping to catch a glimpse of their packmate. Gore dripped from Bluefoot's fangs as she crept from one tent, her attention already centered on the next bit of prey. The mother caught sight of the Improbus braggart, his cudgel laid aside as he gathered several fine furs and bundled them together. With a snarl and a quick flash of sharp incisors, Bluefoot caught the thief by the nape of the neck and used her powerful jaws to crush his cervical spine. She shook the paralyzed Improbus warrior until his body went limp, and then the enraged wolf ripped open the fallen man's trachea. "Blue," Running Bear pleaded. "Come, we'll coordinate our attacks," Screaming Eagle commanded to no avail. Bluefoot turned for a brief moment, her eyes momentarily flicking amethyst before the spark went out. Then she scented something on the air, her massive haunches bunching as she crouched. As the she-wolf leapt toward a familiar cache, several arrows pierced her fur, sending her airborne body into a quarter spiral. A bolt launched into the back of the fallen animal's skull ended the mother's desperate search for her children, and for one bereft moment, The forest held its breath. In an explosion of dry brush and leaves, an enormous wolf burst into the fray, his dark coat bristling, turquoise eyes glittering with malice, teeth bared as he stood guard over his fallen packmate. Pale moonlight glinted off the auburn highlights in the giant predator's fur, and Hardy Appetite's guttural warning to the converging Improbus warriors made several pause. Unwilling to watch another fall, Screaming Eagle and Running Bear entered the fray, their powerful jaws tearing at anything they could reach. The pair bayed in victory when the last of the invaders fell, and they turned to watch Hardy Appetite rip the last limb from his attacker. The wolf's sense of triumph was short-lived, however. In the next moment, an arrow pierced one of Hardy Appetite's beautiful turquoise eyes, and the massive animal staggered. Another missile was launched through the darkness. The distinctive sound of the taut bowstring being released sang in the silence. Screaming Eagle scented the Improbus brave's fear, and the supernatural avenger leapt into the bushes where the assailant knelt. One snap of Screaming Eagle's jaws crushed the enemy's skull, and the Lupos chief emerged unscathed. Yet his decisive action hadn't eliminated the dire reality. Whining in frustration, Running Bear nudged his fallen comrade with his nose. Sprawled among those he brought down, the injured beast used the last of his energy to shift into human form. "I'll die a man," Hardy Appetite sighed with his last breath. "Hide," Running Bear urged, nudging his chief. "We'll grieve later, but they've heard our skirmish. More warriors come." From the cover of the dense forest, Screaming Eagle and Running Bear watched and waited in silence. The Lupos village clung to a wide outcropping of red stone, its northern edge pressed against sheer red rock cliffs that climbed into the dark sky. To the south, on the downhill side of the plateau, the earth broke away into a yawning drop, a barrier no invader could hope to cross. On the eastern side, a narrow gorge cut upward through the rock near the animal pens, creating the only ascent into the higher ground. In the west, a well-worn deer trail wound out of the forest and spilled into the croplands, where the tribe had cleared fields and carved cisterns into the rock face to catch water from the heights above. For generations, the land itself had been their strongest shield, its natural walls turning away countless threats. But now the same barriers trapped them. With raging flames holding the eastern gorge, every path of escape had become a snare, and Screaming Eagle felt the weight of it in his chest. "We will not remain hidden in the light of day," Running Bear prompted, breaking into his leader's thoughts. "The sun will unmask us." "I know." The pair went silent again as Screaming Eagle ran scenarios through his mind. "Bright sun, he is coming," the medicine man exclaimed when he picked up on their packmate's thoughts. Within a few minutes, Screaming Eagle's telepathic connection was able to communicate with the other brave as well. "Report," the chieftain demanded. "The Lupos forces were decimated by the time we returned. White Rabbit and Dancing Moon." Bright Sun's thoughts faltered, his mental voice catching before he forced himself to continue. "I fear Hardy Appetite shared the same fate," the chocolate-colored wolf transmitted as he slunk into the thicket where his packmates waited. Screaming Eagle's proud bearing shrank, and he dropped to his haunches. The names seared his heart. White Rabbit, the sister of his soul, and Dancing Moon, who had steadied him when childhood grief threatened to break him. For a moment, the chief's chest hollowed with sorrow, and only the low rumble of anguish in his throat betrayed that he still lived. Wrestling with the devastating news, mind afire, the chief tried to formulate a strategy, but he faltered. The image of small faces, Bluefoot's daughters among them, pressed against his spirit like fresh wounds. He longed to grieve with them, for them, but there was no time. Forcing the ache down, he hardened his thoughts and commanded, "Bright Sun, find Bluefoot's daughters. I can smell their fear from here, but the Improbus patrols have kept us from their hiding place. I will draw the warriors away and lead them back toward the tents." I will not let you go alone, Running Bear interrupted. We are united in purpose, but I need your direction, Bear. I need to know Raging Flame's plans. Take the path above the cliff and see if you can get close enough to read his thoughts. Now, go, Screaming Eagle directed. Leaving his friends, the chieftain snuck along the southern edge of the fields opposite where Hardy Appetite and Bluefoot lay. When only a few scattered pines separated him from the closest tents, he purposely allowed his foot to fall upon a brittle twig. The semicircle of Improbus braves guarding the bottleneck-shaped ledge leading to the other side of the plateau straightened, stretched forth their torches, and searched the darkness. Grateful for his ebony fur, Screaming Eagle melded with the shadows, head low to the ground as he crept closer to the rock bridge that would take him to the central fire ring. Foregoing caution, he allowed his movement to draw the guard's attention as he crept closer to his destination. A child's cry carried on the wind, and the Lupos chief growled low in his throat to divert the Improbus. In the next moment, he disappeared from sight, using a small channel carved in the hillside to slide several yards to a narrow ledge below. Ducking into a cleft in the rock, Screaming Eagle disappeared from view. Where are you? He telepathically called to his friends. I have 2 of the women and several of the children, Bright Sun advised before going quiet. What do you see, Running Bear? Screaming Eagle internally questioned as he crept through a small series of caverns cut into the rock, hewn out generations earlier for the storage of seeds, furs, and foodstuffs. The compact caves weren't passable for grown men. However, they were a happy haunt of the tribe's children. Tua and Tansy have been taken to the fire ring along with the others, Running Bear announced. The Improbus have collected all the women and children, but I cannot. The elders are silent. Rejoicing that Running Bear's wife and daughter were still among the living, Screaming Eagle refused to consider what the last bit of information might portend. To assume the loss of the wisest among his people was unthinkable, and the chief couldn't let himself dwell on the possibility. Instead, he questioned, How many do you see? The enemy? I cannot count them. Each warrior holds one of our own at knife point. The women are kneeling before them. The younger children are restrained with blades to their throats. Swallowing convulsively, the Lupos chieftain tried to still the frantic pounding of his heart. Do you see Aldonka? No, I am sorry. She is not among the hostages. Screaming Eagle wasn't sure if that was good news or not. The young Spanish woman was in the Lupos village with her elderly aunt at his invitation. He'd only recently been hand-fasted to the vibrant girl, and on their return to the winter camp in the valley, the new husband had promised he would seal their union before the priest of Aldonka's faith. That demon, Raging Flames, has shown himself, Running Bear solemnly advised, and 2 of his men are dragging a woman between them. Who? Running Bear had to steady himself before replying. I do not know which of the women it is. They've taken her scalp and mutilated her body. She is no longer a woman, only a warning. A helpless rage filled both of the Lupos warriors, and Screaming Eagle felt Running Bear slip away as the animalistic violence of the wolf took hold. No! He growled when their telepathic connection was severed. Overwhelmed by the loss, Screaming Eagle paced, tail tucked between his legs. Yet his spirit would not concede defeat. Resolutely, he lowered himself close to the floor and inched himself through the smallest part of the tunnel on his belly. On the other end, where the hand-hewn access opened up to a small cavern, Screaming Eagle was surprised to find a few more children hiding. Terrified by the predator's appearance, several cried out in fear. Shh, Screaming Eagle admonished. It is you, a young girl said, approaching the wolf with her small hand outstretched. She did not see the blood-stained predator. No, she only saw the man she revered, her chieftain. No, Hola, another fearfully scolded. Tell them who you are, the brave child said, awed by the enormous animal. Do you not know your chief? Screaming Eagle quietly questioned, trying to calm the frightened children. Silenced by surprise, the trio of girls stared wide-eyed at the beast's gore-matted fur and stained muzzle. padding forward, Screaming Eagle brushed against each of the children, hoping to share a little comfort. Then he directed, "Follow the water's path to the other side, and take the pathway of the rain to the foot of the hill. Go to Señor Alonso if you can. Warn him of the uprising. These Improbus demons will not stop until they have the whole of this land." In the dim light, it was difficult to ascertain if the little girls understood his directives, but the fact that the shadows were receding indicated the sun's steady rise. "Go quickly, while the night still hides you." Turning back, Hola approached and worriedly whispered, "What will you do?" Filled with hopelessness, the outnumbered man answered, "I do not know, child. I do not know." This has been The Pack Warriors, Episode 4, Outwitted, by Nicholas Coakley and Michele Pollock Dalton. Narrated by Rick Barr. Published by Barr 26 Publishing, LLC. Copyright 2025, all rights reserved. You've been listening to The Pack Warriors audio drama written by Michele Pollock Dalton and Nicholas Coakley. Narrated by Rick Barr. Join the Pack at thepackwarriors.com and explore the legends, lore, and stories that inspired this world. New episodes arrive every Monday. Until then, keep the fire burning. And remember, Monday doesn't have to bite.